Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It's Friday, January 24th, and it's time we talk about Apple TV Plus's first drama of this year, Prime Target. The premiere was Wednesday. 2 episodes were released. Episode 1, A New Pattern. Episode 2, Syracuse. The summary is this. It's a conspiracy thriller where the main character is a Cambridge post-grad student genius in mathematics, secretly working on a research project about harnessing the true power of prime numbers, what they mean, how the fabric of our reality is misunderstood, and when one of his professors gets a whiff of what he's up to, this professor freaks out and then goes insane, burning all the main character's research and then allegedly killing himself in a garage. Episode 2 finds the main character, Ed, trying to pick up the pieces of the mystery. He realizes he's not the first to suspect the power of prime numbers. He gets kicked out of Cambridge for reckless behavior, breaking into his professor's office and trying to steal his work back, and then learns about this shady organization named Kaplar, which invites him to continue his work. At the same time, the NSA is monitoring everything from France until that agency is ambushed. And the main character from that storyline, Taylor, has to go forward diving into whatever river in France that she's in to avoid the bullets. When you say it out loud, it sounds like a very busy show. But to me, it actually felt like if someone watched A Beautiful Mind and came out with a completely wrong message. What if everything that main character was dealing with, that schizophrenic main character was dealing with, was true? So you have a conspiracy theory from the government. You're always being watched. There's a cover-up. The Da Vinci Code in the numbers, everything is actually a hidden meaning. And somehow he's going to mix reality out of figuring out what prime numbers are.
People have compared it to A Beautiful Mind. Also, I think it was The Guardian said that it was a cross between The Bourne Legacy and Good Will Hunting.
Okay.
In the same
yes,
sense
Good
of
Will
math.
Hunting, of course.
Yeah. But which one is not a prime number? Because this is how I want to start off. 5, 17, or 88?
88. It's 88. 88
yes,
is not a prime
you got
number.
it right. 88 because there's no even
8.
numbers.
Yeah,
it's aside from 2.
Anything that you can multiply together besides that number times 1 is a prime number. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then this is something I did learn recently, or probably learned when I was like in 5th grade, but you can multiply any prime number by itself, subtract it by 1, divide that value by 24, and it's always going to equal a whole number. So you can test it out, like with 23, right?
Right.
23 times 23. Maybe I should do it with a lesser value.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so let's take, 7? Is 7 a prime
7
number?
is
Yes,
prime
so
number.
7 times 7, 49. Subtracted by 1, divide by 24 equals 2. And that's always going to be a whole number. Yes. I think that applies for everything past the value of 2 and 3 are prime numbers, so everything past that.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so this show is kind of wonky. I'm not a big fan of it, I'll tell you that from the start, because it doesn't feel like they sell the main character, Ed, as being the super genius. Like, he still has the amount of angst that Matt Damon had in Good Will Hunting, but he does not have nearly the amount of scenes necessary to show him as actually solving math. Like, he takes a tablecloth and he starts scratching his pen, but it's never believable.
Right, so Ed Brooks, that's the main character. The person who plays him is Leo Woodall, and he said that he tried to understand the math at the very beginning of the show, but after a while, it just got too dense, and he was like, you know what? I'm just going to memorize everything and just kind of let the consultant take care of all of it.
Yeah,
okay. So I was really waiting for that Matt Damon from Good Will Hunting to see the mathematician side of him, and it never really seemed like we even got that.
I think what I'm looking for is the part where he goes through a whole, like, formula and explains it step by step.
Right.
Just once. Just do that one time in your Master Genius show, maybe at the first scene, as opposed to what we get, which is this explosion on Iraq that makes it seem like it's a completely different show. I think we're getting Homeland after the first 5 minutes, and instead we're getting like some book club show.
Well, and yeah, I mean, the thing is, the creator, Steve Thompson, isn't even foreign to those type of like analytical characters. He wrote the season 2 and 3 finale of Sherlock. He's also written for Doctor Who. He even created Jericho, but also
he created Jericho, the TV series?
Yeah.
Nice.
But he also wrote The Science of Doctor Who, where Brian Cox, the physicist, tests Doctor Who theories. So I was really waiting to see how in-depth they went, and it just seemed like it was surface level the whole time.
Are we talking about time theories? Like time dilation
but
theories?
like the time travel thing.
That Okay, that can make sense. I guess my first question for him would be, why so many non-necessary plot threads? There's so much padded runtime in this hour-long format, 2 episodes that we get, things that they could have easily cut. Like, for instance, why is Ed in the Cambridge University Boat Club? Is it just to show that he's, like, also in shape? Because we see him doing that, we see him cycling, but it never goes back to that except for like the introduction scene. We're introduced to Fee, his best friend who just turned 23. She's there for like a split second, and then in the second episode, barely there. I don't see the point in adding her as a character. The bartender, Adam Moeller, okay, he has a one-night stand with this dude, nothing really in common, but now they're hanging out all the time in these spare scenes that don't seem to matter too much. He goes to the library at least 3 times for information. This is in the second episode that he easily could have gotten from the professor's widow, the one who killed himself.
And what information is he trying to get again when he goes there? He's
trying to figure out. So the professor, right, heard that Ed is looking into prime numbers, the sin of that. And so he stole his research. He burned it up in his office, which I have questions about, because how do you burn anything in your waste bin in a Cambridge office and not have the smoke detector go off, not have anyone notice? I feel like smoke would be ushering through the room, through the campus. People would be like, what is all that about? Why would he do it that way? Why wouldn't he take the one folder that Ed has with his research in it? This is on Ed for not putting that stuff onto a hard drive. But as Ed said earlier in this first episode, computers aren't fast enough for him. So that's why he only trusts his pen and his paper. And so the professor could have easily thrown that into a pond somewhere and gotten rid of that, and it would have just like soaked through. He wouldn't have been able to make anything of the writing, but instead he decides to burn it. Once Ed is onto the heels of that mystery, he finds out that the professor back in the day, like 20 years earlier, had another girlfriend, Sophia Zamil, who died. She was also a super genius who was working on prime numbers. And that was part of the reason why the professor really, really, really didn't want Ed to be looking into it. And so what was the ending question here? That information, though, the professor had shared with his wife, who's also a professor named Andrea, who's working on this ancient library that's in Iraq. And she could have easily disclosed to Ed what the whole deal with Sophia is, why she was stopped from doing her research back then, who Kaplar are. Like, I'm pretty sure Andrea has answers, and he only goes to her one time. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, all these plot holes and plot threads.
The overall premise, though,
answered for,
the overall premise that like he's found this, I guess, mathematical equation that's going to be able to kind of break encrypted codes and everything like that. I just found that so silly.
It's silly because it's like prime numbers are prime numbers. We've identified them for a long time. In fact, one thing that I now know, the latest prime number that we've been able to identify, because we can count that high now, is 2 to the 139,279,841 minus 1, a number which has 41,024,320 digits when written in the decimal system. It was discovered October 12th, 2024. So very recently. And I think it was discovered by like a 36-year-old working on his postgrad. So I understand that people work on their research papers on this. It's just ridiculous to think that a government is going to be looking at these mathematicians and be afraid of that. You could probably sell me on the idea that the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, that they recruit out of college. So they're clearly probably spying on some universities in some way, or at least looking through transcripts and being like, this is a good candidate for us. But I highly doubt that they're doing what they show here, where they have different agencies in different countries spying on those professors and then uploading their work to some other math genius. That's where I think Sophia might still be alive. I think she went to go work for the government, and that's why the professor gets that shady email in the first episode that's like, I thought we decided we weren't going to work on prime numbers anymore. I think that was from Sophia, possibly.
That could have been. There's a lot of theories on
my other theory. Do you want to hear my other theory? Is that the headmaster of the school is also evil. So he's played by Stephen Rea, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that last name right, but he's a very famous British actor.
He's ranked the 13th greatest Irish film actor of all time by the Irish Times.
Irish actor, and he was in Counterpart, where he played a villain, but at first he seemed like he was a good guy. And so I can easily see him retain that role here. Turns out that because he's part of the reason why Ed gets kicked out. And you would think that because Ed kept saying, he stole my research. That's why I broke into his office, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has evidence of that. His bag still has his name on it, the one that's half burnt. Like, it shows that that was what was happening. You don't even need to really have a camera to prove that the professor had clearly burnt his belongings. If that bag didn't exist, it would be a tougher sell. And then the other thing was when the professor went home, he also burned the tablecloth. That he was an arsonist. He burned the tablecloth that Ed was working on in front of his wife, but it took the wife walking all the way out through the yard to find out why this barrel was on fire, and she still was able to make out that it was the tablecloth. That thing must have been made out of plastic, like, I don't know, some unburnable plastic.
Didn't. Well, yeah, it literally did not burn at all.
I don't understand why that thing hadn't shredded up immediately. She should never have been able to tell if that was the tablecloth.
I was really disappointed because the person that you're talking about burning everything was played by David Morrissey, that he was only going to be in one episode of the TV series.
The governor?
Yeah.
You don't think he's going to come back de-aged to show Sophia's storyline back in 2004?
He might be in some flashbacks, but he's pretty busy right now. He's starring in 2 other comedy series at this point, so I think it was just more like a special guest star appearance. But there has been a surprising kind of uprise of conspiracy thrillers that have come out in the last few months. If you think about it, The Agency, Black Dove, Severance, Silo, The Day of the Jackal, The Night Agent, just yesterday dropped their 2nd season. And this feels like the year of conspiracy thrillers.
Well, the thing about Apple ones, though, is that Slow Horses really took off over the last year or so. It's one of the few Apple shows that have like retained significance into their later seasons.
Yeah, it's like in season 4
the first season
right
kind
now.
of went by underrated. It wasn't until season 2 and 3 where people really jumped aboard that thing. And like you said, Severance, they really are looking into like the more conspiracy, the better. However, you got to make it somewhat plausible. Like, this is a Cambridge level university. You've got a genius character. Prove it. Show us the value and also make it something more interesting. I think, honestly, they heard prime numbers. They were like, that's a cool name. What can we do with the word prime numbers? And then they found out that they're just these boring things.
Well, I found it really funny that Prime Target ended up being a pun. Because, I mean, I heard it, I was like, oh, it's supposed to be this thriller type thing. And then it's like, no, it deals with prime numbers. Stephen Thompson, in 1999, he attended a, interview with this person named Simon Singh, a popular British author, who gave a study of history of cryptography. And then 20 years later, Ed Rubin, a producer for this series, came to him and was like, hey, do you have any series? And he's like, I want to make a mathematical thriller.
Great. And I'm all for that. Just make it more believable. Give us some math that actually matters. You want to mix it with a little chemistry, explain like Higgs boson to like the masses. You've got plenty, I think, scientists that would. Neil deGrasse Tyson loves to jump in and start talking science with people. So if you wanted to, it just doesn't feel like they had anybody like that on the set.
It reminded me actually of this of the person who worked on The Amazing Spider-Man, because I remember they got this consultant who worked on The Amazing Spider-Man, and every single math problem that they had in that film actually made sense. Like, it seemed like it was actually plausible, at least in that world. And so,
for as much crap as I give it, 3-body problem is that. It's taking some like metaphorical, or not, like some real life figurative equation that's very hard to explain, and trying to do it in a way that's, yes, a complicated story, but also dumbing it down enough for people to understand. I didn't give that show a great review, but it's better than this one.
Like an ER for math, almost. Right?
I wouldn't go that far. That would be like solving every week by week case with a math equation. That's like numbers, honestly. Mm-hmm. You want to go back to like what was that? NBC 2000s, maybe CBS.
Wasn't that CBS?
Yes,
yeah,
maybe CBS.
So if you had to like make this these 2 episodes better, what would you say, aside from just making
cut all the fat, cut all that stuff that I was talking about? Explain more. If you're going to keep, why have a mom and daughter die in front of the audience unless that's just trying to get views or sympathy? They never went back to why they had to show those 2 die in the ice cream store to open up that temple or library that's underneath, that then Ed was so crazy about the numbers on the ceiling.
The intro scene I agree with you. It felt so irrelevant.
Unless they were also being targeted. It seems like we have several agencies at work here. You have the Cambridge board, you have the NSA government, and then you have the even shadier government that may have been sending people out to kill their own people. The thing I've always understood about like the NSA, the CIA, when they are spying on individuals, it's usually by agents that they have deep underground, like Edward Snowden type, where he talked about how they literally keep them locked down in like sort of a dungeon lair.
Right.
They don't get to hang out in France. They're not on vacation. They're I don't know how to explain Taylor's character other than she just seems like she's having a swell time hanging out in all these cool foreign places.
Aside from the very ending where she gets shot at and then jumps in a pool.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So she sends it up the ladder. She's like, I have my suspicions that it actually isn't the professor who was looking into prime numbers, but Ed instead. And as soon as she says that, people kill her boss and they try to kill her. She wasn't even on to anything. I assume now she's going to like maybe try to find Ed, and then they're going to work together to solve some secret equation.
She's going to be this, the kind of second in command. It's strange because really the only people doing interviews and press for this series are Leo Woodall and Quintessa Swindle. Those are the only two people that have even like spoken a word of this series. Even the creator, Steve Thompson, I tried to find him talking about the show to figure out anything. It seems like he's not covering it.
They don't know it's out yet. Honestly, if I was them, I would have insisted that this was put out on a prime number day, and it wasn't. I think it was put out on the 22nd, which 22 is not a prime number. 122205 is not a prime number because it ends with a 5. I mean, yeah, they could have done better. Maybe they wanted it to come out in 2024. Or no, it couldn't come. They had to wait 3 years if they really wanted to get the whole thing. So overall, you watched both episodes.
Yeah.
What was your favorite and least favorite point?
My favorite point, just because of how funny it was the ending when she had to jump into the ocean. Because I found that stunt to just be
I did burst out laughing.
That was
until
incredible.
Then, it was, I don't even know, it had created a realism, kind of a boring realism, but still one that you were not expecting just people to start dying left and right.
And my least favorite part was probably everything else about the series. I know that I'm the one who's doing research, so technically I can't rate it, but I would give it like a 3 out of 10.
I was going to give it a 3.5 out of 10. I don't get it. I like math. I don't like it when a show pretends to be smart, and that's what it feels. So much production value. They went probably to France to film this thing. Why? No one knows, other than money, money, money. So, yeah, for me, what does the actual ratings have?
So on the day of release, the show had a 31%, which made it at the time Apple TV's lowest Rotten Tomatoes score, even beating out The Crowded Room, which had 33%. And before,
I didn't mind The Crowded Room, right?
Before, the Billy Crystal show had a 32%. Ever since then, though, because at 31, it jumped up to a 42%, but the audience rating is still below before on The Crowded Room with a 56%. Has a 6.6 on IMDb, and it seems like all the reviews decided to go with a similar theme. I'm going to read them off and see if you can guess what they are. The Hollywood Reporter, Apple TV Plus's math-themed conspiracy theory thriller doesn't add up to much. IGN, Prime Target review doesn't add up. Television, Prime Target just doesn't add up. MovieWeb.com, a number conspiracy thriller that doesn't add up.
You know what's dumb about all that, and that's kind of infuriating, is that prime numbers are all about products. They're about multiplication. It's not about addition or sums. So that's kind of annoying.
Joe Blow, the numbers don't add up for Apple TV Plus thriller series. Seattle Times, mathematical conspiracy thriller doesn't add up. Collider said for positive reviews, grounded provocative spy thriller mostly adds up. Yahoo, Prime Target adds up.
Oh god.
So it's like that was just on like the first page. I'm sure if I went any deeper, it would have just been that considerably.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a lot of puns. That's a lot of the same pun.
The same exact one. I had never seen that many before.
Neither have I.
So for Prime Target, that's actually been the name of a lot of like movies and TV shows. I have a game here, which is just based on the IMDb plot summaries. I want to see if you can guess which one was made up.
All right.
So the first one is he wanted to be a good cop. The mob wanted him destroyed, so they made everything he loved a prime target.
Okay, so the main character's a cop.
And the second one is an NYPD detective looks into the deaths of several police women and discovers that she is to be the killer's next victim.
Okay, so the main character's a cop?
Yep. The third one is Barty Buxter, a notorious outlaw, that's played by Sam Elliott, by the way. A notorious outlaw becomes the target of a ruthless bounty hunter, played by Tom Selleck, after Barty steals his gold. It's a Western.
So this is an outlaw, like you said, yeah.
And then the last one is a detective seeks stolen money, sending her undercover to protect a paroled woman from her dangerous ex.
I guess that one because it's the most vague. Yeah.
It was actually the Western.
Okay, it was the Sam Elliott one?
Yeah, there's no movie, I think, with Sam Elliott or Tom Selleck at all.
Those all, honestly, 1, 2, and 4 all sounded like the same sort of cop movie. Just,
I think the last one was a TV episode of a show called Barnaby Jones.
Oh, okay.
The episode came out January 19th, 1978.
I thought you said that they were all movies, and so I was... But yeah, there's a lot of prime targets in the world, and my thing about the second episode is it's called Syracuse. You'd think that would be about the school Syracuse. It's not. They talk about Cambridge a lot. They talk about Oxford.
Right, because they shot it. Yeah, at Cambridge.
Yeah, they shoot a lot of stuff in those like old cathedral type look. It looks like Harry Potter. Looks like the castle for Harry Potter. It also looks like in His Dark Materials when she's running around, but I think she is running around Oxford in there. There is a funny scene where he's hanging out with his family and he's like, can they just get off the lawn? They're not allowed to be on the lawn. What's the lawn there for then? If kids aren't allowed to walk on, can you imagine if you were in college? Because we had lawns and yards and stuff like that. And people being encouraged.
He just sounds like lawn for the college.
Yeah, they're just so snooty there. Like there was so much highfalutin, like, you know.
I was gonna compare him to Gran Torino Clint Eastwood, but you're right. That's at college. That's usually what kids walk on. If you had to pick a favorite character out of all of them, could you pick one?
Could I pick one?
Yeah,
probably. If you put a gun to my head, my favorite character, probably Olsen. So he gets shot in the second episode. He's the boss who begrudgingly sends it up the ladder when Taylor's like, I think that the professor wasn't actually working on prime numbers, but his student was. And just his death scene probably made his character the funniest to me because like he really had done nothing up until that point, and yet he was already complaining about the fact that his higher ups were considering him crazy. And he was literally telling her, drop it. He was doing what you'd think they'd want him to do, and then they shot him for it. Or at least that's what it feels like. It feels like the people who shot him were the people, like they cut off their ear despite their face.
My favorite character is probably the motorcyclist who shot him.
That was Vin Diesel. That was like some form of a Vin Diesel character.
I know that Leo Woodall for Edward Brooks. You ask what the rowing scene was there for. That was the actual Cambridge rowing team.
Good for
at the very beginning. So they got some credits, but that's about all I have.
When I was in Boston, I saw some people rowing for like the Harvard team too. So it is funny how they love that. It's either that or lacrosse. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.